This morning, Ukrainian forces destroying all 10 missiles targeting Kyiv. Also reporting, however, that falling debris has resulted in the deaths of a 9-year-old girl, her mother, and another woman. Ukraine's Minister of Internal Affairs says all three deaths were tried to enter a bomb shelter that was closed. You may recall Russian President Vladimir Putin has said he launched this invasion to stop NATO from getting closer to the Russian border. Well, now NATO's Secretary General Stoltenberg says that is exactly what will happen.
As late as last year, all allies agreed that Ukraine will become a member of this alliance. And we are making concrete steps because Ukraine is moving towards NATO, meaning that they are coming closer and closer, meaning that they are moving from Soviet standards to NATO standards, equipment, doctrines, and we are helping them doing that as we speak.
CNN's Sam Kiley joining us this morning live in eastern Ukraine with more on this. So first, Sam, let's talk about those attacks overnight on Kyiv. What more are we learning?
Well, we understand, Erica, that these 10 missiles were shot down over the Ukrainian capital after a brief sort of nearly a day-long lull in which there'd been no attacks. That was the first day that there'd been no attacks, more or less, for about 2 weeks in the Ukrainian capital, which has been the focus of attention of the Russian bombardment. But tragically, 3 people killed and a number, well, they were all killed and a large number injured when they found themselves locked out of a significant bunker. Now, these are Soviet-era bunkers that are built around the city, very frequently close to or underneath the tower blocks and residential blocks. But for reasons that are now subject of an official investigation in Kyiv, more than a year after the war, somebody had locked the door, trapping people outside, and then tragically they were hit by debris descending. This all coming on a day in which the Russians continue to be under pressure too. They are saying in Belgorod province in the south of Russia, on the northern border with Ukraine, that a large number of villages along the border are being evacuated. More than 300 children they're talking about evacuating women. And that's because a number of towns they claim are being hit currently with Ukrainian artillery and mortars. And this is now a part of a new pattern of cross-border operations being conducted by Ukraine into Russia. They had been extremely rare in the past. Now they're becoming more routine. So you're seeing a lot more of this tit-for-tat effect on civilians on both sides of this conflict.
So there's the tit-for-tat aspect of it, and then there's also what we could potentially see on the heels of these comments from Stoltenberg saying that NATO members agree Ukraine should be a member. What is the sense this morning in terms of what that could prompt in terms of attacks from Russia?
I don't think the Russians have a great deal in their armory that would be deployed in some kind of response to this sort of event. It's always a mistake to think that people, when they're prosecuting a war, will react to anniversaries or retaliate in kind for certain acts. They are prosecuting an ongoing campaign here. They will use this statement coming from Jens Stoltenberg domestically in the Kremlin to kind of prove their point to the Russian population that they needed to go to war to prevent NATO doing just this. And then it'll be up to the Russians to decide whether or not the Ukraine's closeness to NATO is a consequence of the Russian invasion rather than anything else.
Sam Kiley, live for us in Ukraine this morning. Thank you.
A new front opening in Moscow's war on Ukraine with cross-border attacks bringing the battle to the Russian people. Meantime, a terrifying night in Kyiv. The mayor there says at least 3 people are dead, 14 injured in missile strikes on the capital. It follows days of artillery attacks just inside Russia. The governor of the Belgorod region says hundreds of women and children are being evacuated now. CNN's Claire Sebastian is live in London. And Claire, Kyiv has not claimed responsibility for those attacks, but could this be a turning point in the war?
If it's a turning point, it's not clear just yet, Christine, but it does feel like this is a new phase in the war. We have seen sporadic shelling over the border in the Belgorod region since the beginning, but the uptick has been significant in recent days and weeks. As you said, more shelling reported this morning, a number of injuries reported by the governor there. The impact as well on people living there with the constant threat of injury and death. Children, as you say, in their hundreds being evacuated. This morning we heard they've cancelled sort of state school exams because of the violence there. So it is impacting people in that region. The Kremlin has called the situation rather alarming. And separately this morning, Christine, we're hearing from both of those two groups who were responsible for that pretty violent incursion into Belgorod just a week or so ago. One of them says they are already back on Russian soil. The other says they're close to the border. We've not been able to verify this. And the governor of the Belgorod region says that the enemy is not on his territory at the moment. But they, as you remember, were responsible for really the first bout that we've seen of actual physical fighting on Russian soil since the beginning of this war. So clearly, this is a new phase. It's not just Belgorod. We've seen reported drone attacks as far north as the Bryansk region, which is north of Kiev, down to Krasnodar, 2 oil refineries affected on Wednesday. So this war that was already being fought over a very wide area, it seems that the scope has now widened even further. Christine?
And the Ukrainian government is not taking responsibility, right?
They are not explicitly taking responsibility, but certainly there have been hints, a presidential advisor calling, for example, the drone attack on Moscow Russia's karmic payment and promising more attacks like this, but explicitly no claim of responsibility.
Yeah, and the U.S. Pentagon has said it's counterproductive to be, to be attacking inside Russia. All right, Claire Sebastian, thank you so much.